Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 285. Since Ghislaine Maxwell got arrested, all we have heard is how unfair poor Ghislaine has been treated. There's psychologists watching her every move. She has to wear paper clothes even. She's been put on suicide watch, and she's in solitary confinement. These are just a few of the complaints we have heard from her and her legal team since she's been in the clink. Well, all of that stuff, a bunch of bupkis like we knew it was. And in reality, of course, Ghislaine Maxwell is going to get favorable treatment. Now we find out today that Ghislaine Maxwell is the first inmate at her facility in 6 months to get a face-to-face with her lawyer. What, all those people that have been in jail longer than her don't deserve that face-to-face first? All of these people that have been arrested waiting to talk to their legal counsel shouldn't be given the same opportunity? Why does Ghislaine Maxwell get to be the first inmate in this facility who gets to see her legal counsel face to face? It's absurd. It is absolutely absurd, especially considering the barrage of bullshit her legal team was throwing around about her being treated unfairly. So you see now, right here in front of your face, in front of your eyes, how it unfolds. Complain, when it's obvious the conditions are not what they say they are. And in reality, we know that eventually Ghislaine Maxwell would get some favorable treatment. And here we are. So I would be pissed if I was a lawyer for one of these other inmates, or if I was one of these other inmates, I would be furious that this lady, this high society, so-called member of polite society, gets to see her lawyer before I do. What makes her any better than any of those other people waiting either to go to prison, to be sentenced to prison, or those who have been sentenced, whatever it may be? What makes her have the right to see her attorneys face to face before them? Our article tonight is from the Daily Mail. The author of this article is Karen Ruiz. Headline: Ghislaine Maxwell becomes first federal inmate in NYC allowed an in-person visit since the pandemic started after the British socialite, co-conspirator, fellow child abuser, attorneys were spotted arriving at the prison for a 4-hour meeting. And it wasn't like they just came for a quick, hey, how you doing? They get a 4-hour meeting, and your cousin Mike gets to rot away in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic? That's nice, huh? That two-tier justice system sure is beautiful, isn't it? 2 members of Ghislaine Maxwell's legal team were spotted visiting her in prison on Friday, making her the first federal inmate in New York City to be granted an in-person visit since the start of the pandemic. Wow. So, Ghislaine Maxwell gets arrested. She's only been in there since July. But all of a sudden, she skips to the front of the line to get her lawyers in there to talk to her after we were just fed that whole line of bullshit about how poorly she has been treated. Nobody's buying that, first of all. Second of all, she should not be seeing her lawyers if other people are not. Here's what I've said from the beginning: equal treatment for everybody under the law. Maxwell, 58, has been held at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn since early July when she was denied bail after pleading not guilty to child sex trafficking charges. Wow, you know what? It's not just her facility. She's the first inmate in all of New York City, according to this article, to be granted an in-person visit. Can you imagine all of the people that are in jail in New York City? Think about that for a minute. And she's the first one granted an in-person sit-down with her lawyers? I don't even know what to say about that. I mean, these lawyers are going to have a field day that their clients were left in the dark while Ghislaine Maxwell was able to get that top-notch treatment. Must be nice to have a couple of bucks. Must be nice to have a few political connections that are still active, huh? Until today, prisoners had not been allowed to meet with their attorneys or other visitors in person due to the coronavirus restrictions. Defense attorney Christian Everdell, Harvard alum, was seen arriving at the prison Friday morning alongside another female member of Maxwell's legal team, the New York Daily News reported. Both wore masks as they entered the facility. Well, that's nice. It's a good thing that they wore masks. I mean, that protects everybody from what's going on. Now that they have their masks on, well, it's all okay. Unless you're one of the other countless numbers of prisoners in the New York detention center system and rotting away waiting for your chance to speak to your lawyers to formulate your defense. Meanwhile, you pick up the news, read the news the next day, and this is what your family sees, that this monster gets to speak to her representation and they don't? Sources told the paper it was the first time an inmate had received a legal visit since the pandemic started, and that the visit lasted nearly 4 hours. I mean, wow. This is a case that has been riddled with privilege for the upper crust of society, for the rich, for the powerful. And Ghislaine Maxwell is still getting dealt those cards? She's still getting called to the front of the line? How is that even possible? Attorney Sean Hecker, who has filed a lawsuit seeking to grant defense attorneys access to their clients again, slammed the visit as absurd and unjust. Yeah, I'll tell you what, Mr. Sean Hecker, I agree with you there, sir. Absolutely ridiculous. And like I said before I started the article, I'm sure that there are some lawyers that are insane over this. If I was a lawyer for one of the inmates in New York that I've been trying to see my client or my client has requested to see me and I have not been able to do so due to the coronavirus restrictions, and I wake up and I find out that Maxwell, of all people, gets to go and talk to her legal representation for 4 hours, yeah, I'd be pretty pissed. Never mind if I was this attorney Sean Hecker who had a lawsuit already filed seeking to grant the defense attorneys access to their clients. So yeah, I'm pretty sure this guy's fired up. We've been litigating for the federal defenders of New York to obtain a safe, in-person visiting option for many months. MDC detainees have been waiting up to 6 months for such visits, and BOP MDC decides that the first such visit should go to a wealthy British socialite. Absurd and unjust, he said on Twitter. And I'd just like to say, not a socialite, I'd like to say co-conspirator and, child abuser. But besides that, that's a quality rant from Mr. Sean Hecker here, who has a lawsuit going because he wants to be able to talk to his clients in person. Is that too much to ask? I mean, you would think that if you were an inmate in one of these jails, that you'd be dying at this point to see your legal representation. Imagine being in here since the pandemic has started and not being able to talk to your lawyer face to face. But Ghislaine Maxwell, well, she shows up and all of a sudden, the person who's crying that she's being treated so unjustly automatically gets a 4-hour face-to-face. The Bureau of Prisons refused to confirm whether Maxwell was the first inmate to receive an in-person visit, but said coronavirus protocols remain in place. So wait a minute here, hold on. Now, you mean to tell me, according to this article anyway, that these protocols remain in place? So none of these other inmates are going to be able to see their representation after knowing that Ghislaine Maxwell was able to see hers. Is that what you're telling me right now? Is that what this article is trying to tell us? Because I have to say, wow. While in general, legal visits are suspended, case-by-case accommodations will be accomplished at the local level and confidential legal calls will be allowed in order to ensure inmates maintain access to counsel, a spokesperson told the paper. We are facilitating attorney-client visitation as well as judicial proceedings via video conference, primarily at our detention centers. So it's a case-by-case basis. Who decides? The Bureau of Prisons? How many other waivers have they granted since the pandemic has started? That would be a good place for us to start, no? If they haven't granted any other waivers and all of a sudden Ghislaine Maxwell gets the waiver, well, what does that tell you? What does that say about this fine two-tier justice system that lords over us? Just more evidence about how corrupt and ancient it is. Hecker said he learned Maxwell was the first prisoner to be granted access to her legal team in person from another source. It is outrageous that the first-person visit would be granted to a well-heeled British socialite who the President of the United States that he wished well. He told CNBC that it only serves to confirm that our government doesn't understand that they operate two different systems of justice, one for the well-heeled and well-connected, and one for everyone else. Wow, this Sean Hecker, this is my kind of guy, huh? Out here talking about the two-tier justice system and pointing out that Ghislaine Maxwell still is, somebody who has connections in higher places, right? But the fact of the matter is, if she's getting these visits and nobody else is, and there's no other waivers that have been granted, the question is, why did she get a waiver and nobody else has gotten one? It's not like nobody else has asked, according to this lawyer. Again, he has filed a suit because he is not granted access to his clients. And we could talk about the video conferencing, and that's definitely a workaround, no doubt. But if Maxwell is getting access, then all of the other inmates should have the same access, or nobody should have access. Hecker said officials have been discussing allowing inmates visits from their lawyers again, but they are likely to be limited to a 1-hour session from one lawyer. Maxwell, however, was visited by 2 people for over 3 hours. So again, whatever Maxwell gets, the rest of the inmates should get as well. I don't understand how they think that something like this is just going to be ignored with all of the spotlight that is on this case. You would think that people would have all of their ducks in a row and would be conducting themselves in a correct and proper fashion. There is no way that Ghislaine Maxwell should be getting visits from her lawyers while nobody else does. It comes days after the British socialite, co-conspirator, fellow child abuser, general all-around scumbag, was denied her request to be transferred out of solitary confinement after lawyers argued she was unable to properly prepare for trial under 24-hour surveillance. So I guess she's going to be able to properly prepare now, right? We won't have to hear that anymore. On the bright side, her lawyers can go and get stuffed now with their stupid-ass, ridiculous comments about how she's being treated so poorly. No, she's not being treated poorly. In fact, she's being treated like a high-profile prisoner should be treated. And from what we're reading here, she's getting some special privileges even. So please save it. She had previously complained about conditions inside the jail where she is to remain until her trial next July. Maxwell has been taken off suicide watch earlier this month, but is being searched multiple times each day and is under constant watch of the guards, her lawyers said. In a letter protesting about the uniquely onerous conditions of her confinement, her legal team claimed that she has been kept under constant surveillance without her consent. Again, you're in prison, okay? Jail, I should say. Not prison yet. That's next. But you're in jail. There is no more your consent, okay? You're part of the menagerie now. You're on display. If they want to watch you 24 hours a day, so be it. If they want to scan you with whatever sort of machinery they have that runs the scan, hey, guess what? You're getting scanned. If it's time to take a shower, guess what, Ghislaine? It's time to take a shower. And when it's time for you to eat your bologna sandwich for dinner, guess what? You're going to eat it, and you're going to like it. Maxwell was arrested on July 2nd on charges that she assisted her former boyfriend Co-conspirator, fellow child abuser, convicted pedophile, and late financier, Jeffrey Epstein in the sexual abuse of minors between 1994 and 1997 and lying under oath. She has pleaded not guilty. Look, it's a farce that Ghislaine Maxwell is given any sort of special privileges that other inmates are not receiving. I don't know how much more clear I can be about that. And in fact, I really would like to see where this story ends up going. Does this open the floodgates for other prisoners now to have one-on-ones with their lawyers? It should. I know if I was an inmate or if I was one of these lawyers, that's what I would be pining for. And I think they have a good case, right? If you bring this before a judge, I think a judge would probably side with the plaintiff here. Because it's a legitimate case. If it's good for Ghislaine, why is it not good for Joe Bob? And this is just another example of what this case has held from the very beginning. We keep seeing instances of the very most privileged amongst us getting special circumstances provided for them no matter the situation. So next time you hear Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyers crying foul, the next time you hear them complaining about her so-called terrible conditions inside of the jail, just remember that she got a 4-hour one-on-one with her lawyers while the rest of those inmates were told to rot. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with the article can be found in the description box. And you know what's coming next. It's Friday. I know a lot of you are going out, going to have a good time. Please do that. Hell, we need more of that right now. I'm sure all of us do. But if you're going to be out drinking, or if you're one of the states where a little cheeb is legalized, please be responsible and do not get behind the wheel. We have enough problems right now. Can't be losing anybody to silly-ass car crashes. So, all right, everybody, enjoy your Friday night, and I will be back tomorrow.